How's it going, guys? John here. This is the Basic Expert, and this week we are continuing our discussion on basic fantasy, sort of. This video is not necessarily about basic fantasy exactly, but how I supplement this game with other sources. Because, as I stated before, this book here, I think I got it for $5, print on demand, which is fantastic. I really love the price point of basic fantasy. I think that's probably one of the biggest selling points for it. It's also a little more beginner friendly in that it's easier for more modern players to understand. There's no THAC0, there's no descending armor class, there's no attack matrices. It's ascending armor class with attack bonuses. It's all stuff that's super familiar. But I do supplement the game with other things, and it just shows, I think, the power of the OSR in that this here is compatible with this. I could get it in front of me here. The rules Cyclopedia and this as well. Lion and Dragon. And these are things that I use to supplement my game. So let's start with Lion and Dragon and what I use from this bad boy here. This is a game by RPG Pundit. It is a rather cool game. It is a more kind of gritty, down-to-earth, low fantasy version of England during the War of the Roses, hence the name Lion and Dragon. And it is the thing that I use mostly from here are there are rules for summoning demons, which I've used already, and I've used some of it in an adventure, which I ran my players through for my Subscribe Star supporters, where they go on a mission into the sewers and discover a summoner who's been kind of dealing with demons in inappropriate ways, let's say, with victims. And they found a scroll that detailed the demon summoning rituals, and my players found it. Unfortunately, the players wanted to keep the scroll, and I would have let them, but they knew they were dealing with undead, so they went and got a cleric NPC that they have befriended in the past to come down into the sewers and help them clear out the undead, because the party currently does not have a cleric in the party. It's a druid, a fighter, and a thief. And so they wanted to keep the scroll, I think, and just to see what would happen. Probably wouldn't have ended well for them, because it was the ritual to summon a demon lord, which these rules were outlined in Lion and Dragon as well. The required materials to summon the demon, ritual involved, difficulty check numbers that players have to roll over in order to achieve them. So this is completely compatible because it's based on this. This is itself essentially a hack of the Basic Expert rules, which is what Basic Fantasy is BX. So this is it drops in rather easily with very minimal tweaking under the hood to make it work. So I use it for that, and rather enjoy that aspect of it. And I expect to use more for demon summoning rules in the future, potentially, for my players. I think that it's always fun to throw evil demons into your campaign setting for players to deal with. Other things from Lion and Dragon that I use is you can use firearms. There are some medieval firearms rules here, and they're very simple. It works well for how simple medieval firearms were of that era. And I have in my campaign setting a land to the east that is very oriental in nature, essentially like a very China-like culture, where in our world, historically, they posit that gunpowder was first discovered and created and used. And so I kind of have, like, in my setting, far to the east, there's these importation of weapons that are being sent in because there's a war between the Northerners and the Sultanate of the South for land. There's land dispute, and obviously the Easterners are selling firearms to either side if they can afford it and want to use it. And so my players haven't ran across firearms because they exist in my world, but they are rare. and there are rules that are serviceable. They're fine for OSR stuff for of the era that can be used in this as well. I would give firearms. I don't use exploding dice. Lion and Dragon does for like everything, but I don't use exploding dice for melee weapons or anything like that. But I do use it for the firearms on here because to me that just makes sense. If you're shot, that's a lot different the way ballistics of firearms work in comparison to an arrow or a stone from a sling or something like that. It's not. They don't, when they enter a target, they don't function the same way as a stone does more often than not. It's similar concept, obviously, a little object moving at high velocity towards a target, but the velocities are totally different. So that's what I use from Lion and Dragon. As well, one more thing is alchemy. So the thief in our group wanted to learn how to make poisons, and Lion and Dragon has difficulty checks for gathering herbs and different materials needed to make poisons and healing herbs and things like that, which I've used in this. I've used the all heal herb in my in this that is Herbalism DC 12. It's an apothecary DC 10, and it takes 2 days to prepare. The application of all heal enhances natural healing from injuries, in which case a character who takes it will heal at a rate of +1 hit point per day for the next week. This is aside from any other bonuses to medical treatment. So normally you only heal 1 hit point a day in old school games. This just bumps it up to 2 hit points a day, which doesn't seem like a lot, but within old school play, that's a big deal. It's useful. It decreases the amount of time that players need to rest between adventures and whatnot. So I use that as well. And my player wants to make poisons, again, which are outlined within Lion and Dragon, and super useful. From the rules cyclopedia, mostly what I use from this is I can use some monster stats from this. It's not that big of a deal. You can easily convert descending armor class into ascending by taking. You could take this and subtract it from 20. Whatever a descending armor class for a creature is in this, subtract it from 20, and that will give you an ascending armor class for basic fantasy, which is super easy. I also use weapon mastery. Weapon mastery is really cool. My players are really loving that. They're level 3, almost level 4 in our game, and our fighter, for instance, he likes to dual wield. We use the dual wielding rules, which is a supplement material. Well, I think we just use the dual wielding rules from this, which are very similar to the supplement material for free on the Basic Fantasy website as to how it works. So our fighter is dual wielding. He usually wields like a long sword in one hand and a short sword in the other, and really loving that. Weapon mastery is really cool in that it sort of steps up the damage and things that a player can do with their weapons, which is really awesome. And it doesn't come for free. They don't just level up and get those things. They level up and they have the option to learn new things, which they have to pay trainers for. And there's a chance, which costs money, costs gold, and there's a chance that they will fail at studying the things needed to advance in that skill. So it adds a little more stuff to do during downtime. It makes the players want to search for weapon masters and trainer NPCs in town, which I rather like. Other things from the rules cyclopedia that I use is I like the random encounter rules in this better than the way it's written in Basic Fantasy. In the rules cyclopedia, it breaks down more on the environment that you're in, the range that a random encounter occurs on. So like forests and mountains is like a 1 to 3 on a d6 during the day, and a 1 to 3 on a d12 during the night, I believe. I could be wrong. Whereas like it's just in a regular environment, it might be like a 1 on a d6 or a 1 on a d12 at night. And so I like that variability based on environment, because then it makes the players consider before they go out into the forests, are we well prepared, because we're going to run into stuff that might kill us. It's more dangerous in the forest than it is on the road or in sometimes even in the dungeon. So it makes players think more carefully as to how they plan their routes, which way they go. Do we want to cut through the forest? We might run into stuff more in a more likely manner than if we go around. I also use in the background mass combat rules. I don't know, the mass combat rules in the rules cyclopedia are kind of boring to me. It kind of takes, it's really well done and it's explained very well, but it takes a bunch of different factors: the power level of the leader of the force, the number, the type of forces within that unit, and it just combines everything into one statistic and into one roll, and then you decide from there casualties. So it's not very wargamey. I could see someone using like a 1/10 scale and enjoying that more. It depends on what your group wants to do. If your group's not that interested in mass combat, probably don't even just do mass combat, but if you do, you can use the rules cyclopedia rules to kind of adjudicate that very quickly with single rolls and narrate kind of what happens based on the rolls, or do something else. There's plenty of war games out there. Chainmail is still out there and exists. You could easily take that and use that. What I do like about the mass combat rules in the rules cyclopedia is that you can use them in the background. So what I did is I went through all the settlements in my setting and I calculated out the population and then what percentage of the population would be a dedicated fighting man. So what's the dedicated fighting force of all the different factions in my world, and where are those armies at? And I can then do with single rolls, by doing the rules as they're written in the rule cyclopedia, I can kind of play battles out in the background and then feed that information to my players to make the world feel more living and alive and breathing, which I think is one cool way of feeding that to the players. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. It feels like world building with dice, and so I rather enjoy that. It's kind of fun to do it that way. I also use, you can also use the stronghold rules from in here. I rather like that. They're a little more detailed than basic fantasy. And skills, I use the skill system from the rules cyclopedia, because basic fantasy is very simple. You just have your attribute scores, your ability scores, and that's it. In the rules cyclopedia, you got kind of like, if you're familiar with 5e, you got like skills, sub-skills under your ability scores. So for instance, acrobatics is tied to dexterity, and trapping or hunting is tied to like wisdom or intelligence or something like that. And the difference being, players roll a d20 and they have to roll under their parent ability score, and they can get a level of training in a skill as they go up, which will give them a -1 to the roll, increasing their chance to roll under it for every level of training they achieve in it. So like, first level is, just roll under it. Second level is you get a -1. That's kind of how I use it, how I interpret it. And I rather like that. I try not to get too skill spammy with it though. Like it's just kind of there in the background as an option, or if I need to do something where I need to make a ruling on, for instance, my thief likes to, he wants to be like a ninja, He's more playing as like a ninja. He's using weapon mastery from the rules cyclopedia to throw his daggers at stuff, and he wants to like run up the wall and throw a dagger and do cool stuff like that, which I'm fine with. And the weapons mastery and the skill system kind of gives me rules to do that don't necessarily exist within basic fantasy. And it makes thief kind of fun. He's squishy, but he can do cool stuff by giving me like a rule set to allow him to do cool stuff. So that's kind of what I use. This is a much shorter video this week, and I apologize for that if you were expecting something longer, but this one's kind of short and sweet. I just kind of wanted to make a quick little appendices video. I'm probably going to record another video after this. I'm going to be out of town tomorrow, and so recording this one ahead of time, but you're watching this on Monday, so tomorrow I'll be out of town, and I will not be able to record videos while I'm gone. So, real quick too, I wanted to note that Cowpunchers, my Crunchlight cowboy western role-playing game, is print on demand at Lulu. I'm trying to get it set up on DriveThruRPG. People are asking me where's the best place to get it. Eventually DriveThruRPG will probably be the best place to get it in print once I get the file set up for it, but it's been kind of a pain in the backside to do that. But eventually, hopefully soon, I'll have it set up and ready to go. For now, it's $11 on Lulu for the print. It's 24 pages, full color, really nice quality. I'm happy with the quality that Lulu's doing. Hopefully drive-thrus will be just as good. And on drive-thru, you can get the PDF for $3.50. Eventually on drive-thru, when I get the print file set up on there and I have a proof and I approve it, I'm gonna you buy the rule book on drive-thru, the physical copy, and you'll get the PDF for free with it, is what my plan is with that. So if you can hold out and wait to get it until DriveThruRPG has it, I would assume it's probably going to be somewhere in midsummer here, maybe next month or sooner, when you will be able to order it on DriveThruRPG, is my hope, for physical print on demand, but we'll see. I'm also working, it kind of happened out of nowhere, I'm still working on my Aztec thing, but that's more of like a very long-term project of like Aztec and Conquistador role-playing game. We're using white box rules, but I wanted to see if I could do it, and I wanted to see if I could take my home-brewed game system here. It's very simple, and apply it towards like a sword and sorcery, gritty fantasy, heroic adventure role-playing game. And I think I have. It just sort of happened. I wasn't intending to make it that way, but it just sort of happened. So keep an eye out for that. I don't know when that's going to come out. Hopefully soon, but we'll see. It's going to be a bigger book than Cowpunchers is, because I'm going to provide a full monster, like menagerie of monsters. I'm going to have spells. It's going to have everything you need to play in one book. So keep an eye out for that. And for those who don't know, this is a D6 dice pool based skill game. So in the fantasy version, you will be able to cast spells and wear plate armor and fight with a sword as the same character, or you can just dump all your skill points like into swords and to armor, or swords and bows, or whatever it is, intimidation, whatever it is you want to be good at. You can dump your skill points into it and play the kind of character you want to be. It's classless. So that's what's coming up. Hopefully hopefully all that stuff interests you guys out there. Sound off in the video what you guys think. How, if you run basic fantasy, do you do like me and use other sources to sort of supplement your game, make it a little more richer? I want to reiterate though, and as I've done before, that all of these little extra things that I've thrown into basic fantasy, you don't need. The core rules are complete in and of themselves. They're very simple, but they're complete, and you can run a full, healthy, fun, enjoyable, fulfilling campaign with just the basic rule book of basic fantasy, one book. The beauty is that everything else is free as well, so highly suggest you check it out. Basic fantasy will be linked to in the video description as usual, and links to Cowpunchers and all my other stuff where you can find me will be there as well as my subscribe star for supporters that want to support what I do. For those that do support, I'm gratefully I am fully or very grateful. My brain is not working for your support, and I don't think I'm going to be streaming tonight or next Monday, unfortunately. So 2 weeks without streaming on Monday. I'm sorry, but I'm going to be out of town and I need to get prepared for that. But thank you guys for watching. Until the next video, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.